Episode number 15 of the Sweaty Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Justin. Zach is here with me today. We are 2 days, as of recording this, it's 7 in the evening on Tuesday, September 2nd. So, as we're recording this, we have 2 days until kickoff. This will get out sometime on Wednesday. So, by the time you're seeing this, it'll be a day till kickoff. But football is tangibly here. All of your favorite fantasy football sources are posting their week one content, start sits, all that stuff. So we're right into the season. We did our main redraft league draft last night, the one that Zach and I are in together. Um, yeah, I mean it's here. It's the games are being played this week. Fantasy points are hitting the rosters this week. What are you thinking about fantasy football?
Man, I am literally ecstatic. I was on the phone with a buddy last night and he told me about his week one touchdown scorers parlay. And I'm like, oh man, how much I should have tear. One manly tear slithered down my cheek, and I'm just so excited to gamble. I'm so excited to start six fantasy lineups every week. I'm so excited to put my mental health in the hands of 20 to 30-year-old guys across the nation who have no idea who I am.
How many leagues are you in this year?
I
Do
have
you
my
know?
three dynasty leagues. I have four redraft leagues, and I have four best ball leagues. Best ball is kind of not really that doesn't really count, but I do have seven managed leagues this year, not including pick'ems.
Best ball is great. It's great for that, so you can get exposure to players, and if players hit, you at least can benefit from it, but you don't have to spend your um, you don't have to spend a whole bunch of brain power thinking about it. Counting it up in one, two, three, four, five, six, 7 leagues this year. Um, it's getting up there. The fantasy footballers, they did an AMA today, and they were asked how you know when you're in too many leagues, and they said like when Tuesday hits, and you're like, oh, I have to go do waivers. I feel like that's
I'm there.
I think that's the point I'm getting to, where I'm like, I have to go through every one of these and look what defenses are on the waivers. Who do I want to pick up? Is there enough? I think I have too many leagues to the point where it's like, can I look 2 weeks out? I can't look 2 weeks out at my matchups for every league. Like I'll have Sweaty Dynasty and probably redraft, and other than that, I'm gonna be winging it week to week.
I'm not a look 2 weeks out guy in any of my leagues. That's not I kind of play, but I definitely last year was I was feeling waiver wire night. Tuesday waiver wire night was not a fun thing for me. I actually have it carved into my schedule. I was working on that before we went live, just a little checking those defenses in my dynasty leagues, especially my rebuilds. Making sure I'm all dialed. And it's going to be a grind. I over 18 weeks, if I spend an hour a week, I'm set to spend 18 hours working on waivers over the next 6 months, and that's not my favorite thing in the world.
Oh, that's brutal. Yeah, it definitely gets to the point where there's leagues that you care about, and there's some leagues that you don't necessarily care about by the end of the year, especially by the end of the year, because this part of the year we're so excited. Like we haven't seen a football game since February. We're just stoked. We have our takes, they've been locked. We know who's going to be bad and good, and we're finally going to start to get data points that move values around, allow you to do fun trades. And so like it's exciting to go through all my leagues right now, but like about a month in, I'm going to be like, ugh. I have to go through more leagues. I'm only halfway through my waivers. Oh no. Ugh.
Yeah, man, it's going to be a grind, but that's what we sign up for, man. We're grinders. We are the hard workers of the industry, man. Seven leagues, a podcast, 47 parlays a Sunday. Yeah, we're built for it, both.
There you go. All right. So today we're going to go over the questions that we still have that we're hoping get answered in about the first month of the football season. That's kind of the timeline that we use. So, like I said, it's been since February. We've had the draft, we've had free agency, we've had some preseason, training camp. People have signed contracts. There's lots of coach speak. So like there's all these moving parts that are starting to come together, and there's things that we think we have clarity on, and then there's other things that we don't necessarily know exactly what's going to happen. And so Zach and I each brought two to the table that we'll kind of discuss. But the point of this episode isn't really to give an answer to these questions. It's more these are the things that we're still wondering about, and hopefully 3, 4 weeks in we have a more definitive answer.
Absolutely. Just to note, I'm gonna kind of just note for the listeners, I kind of approached it more in a dynasty perspective than redraft. I know we've been really redraft focused over the last few months. I had a really hard time. I have plenty of questions about and things that I am looking for over the first few weeks of the season. But one thing that I was noticing was even as I start to answer these questions for myself, I don't see them being super actionable from a redraft perspective. You know what I mean? You're going to launch into your first one, and I'll kind of present my take as to why I don't think that anything we see in the first 4 weeks or so is going to be actionable from a redraft perspective. So I am leaning a little more into dynasty here, and kind of looking for tells where we can kind of exploit some value because it's very hard to get trades to go through. Any sleeper that's on someone else's roster, they see the thing that you are seeing when you're trying to trade for them. You know what I mean? So gonna try and subvert that a little bit. But this is definitely for me. I just want to preface kind of some of my takes. Definitely more dynasty focused, definitely more long term, big picture focus for me today.
All right, well, I'll jump into my first one. Um, this guy's been a topic of conversation for a lot of the offseason just because he's such a wild card. He calls himself the unicorn now. Travis Hunter, number two pick in the NFL draft. How is he used? Um, I mean, you look at last year, Marvin Harrison was picked at fourth overall. He was going at the 1-2 turn. So you had to call your shot on him basically being a wide receiver one, a top end wide receiver one. Because if you say roughly half of the first round is quarterbacks, I mean, running backs, half of them are wide receivers, you're saying he's going to be a top six wide receiver by drafting with a 1-2 turn. Um, Travis Hunter went two picks higher than that, and he's going in the fifth round. Now, the concern with Travis Hunter that's been touched on many times is that he wants to play two ways. So the question that I have is in the first month of the season, how are they using him? Is he an 80% offense, 40% defense? Is he 40% offense, 80% defense? Now I will caveat this and I will say if he comes out and he's playing mostly defense and Brian Thomas gets hurt, then he's going to switch over and he's going to basically play like 100% of the snaps. Like if an injury, I don't know any of the Jaguars cornerbacks off the top of my head. I think maybe Andre Cisco is a name that pops into my mind. I don't know why.
I believe he's a Jet now, and I think he's a safety. But
Well, shows how much I know about the
I don't,
defense.
but I couldn't name any. I couldn't name their starting DBs right now, in all honesty.
Anyways, if their starting cornerback gets hurt really bad and is going to be out for a while, then he'll switch over and probably play mostly defense. So I think even if he comes out and he's being used like we want him to be used, he's one injury away from his fantasy value going away. However, if he's only on the field for 60% or 80% of the offensive snaps, what snaps is he on the field for? Do they put him in on the goal line and they're designing things for him to the point where he's still really valuable even though he's not a 100% full-time player? I think if Liam Cohen, I guess this is kind of a Jaguars overall. If Liam Cohen looks like a genius and he makes Trevor Lawrence look like a competent NFL quarterback, to the point where he could support Brian Thomas and Travis Hunter. And then Travis Hunter is being put in packages where they're specifically giving him looks. I mean, I guess it's not quite as much of a question. It's just curiosity as to how they use him and if they use him in the right way in the first month of the season. I think it could be wheels up. I mean, he was picked second overall for a reason. He's an insane talent. Um, Part of that's the two way. If he was just a straight up receiver, he wouldn't have gone two. Do you think he would have gone top 10?
If he's a straight up receiver, I do. Yes, I think he was a better wide receiver prospect than Tedero McMillan was, and McMillan went eight. So I mean, that's obviously there's some stylistic preferences there. I mean, Ted really fits well with Bryce, so maybe it's not that linear, but I do think he was a top 10 pick if he was only a wide receiver.
So if he's a top 10 talent at wide receiver and he plays the important snaps, um, like if he doesn't come out right when they receive the kickoff, maybe give him a couple snaps off and then he comes in so he's only playing 80%. Do I want him playing from the 20 to the 40 or do I want him playing in the red zone? I would rather see him playing in the red zone where he's getting more opportunities. And so, I mean, that's my hope, but that's something that I'm really going to be looking for in the first few weeks of the season is how do they use him. Like, how much is he on the field, and how do they use him when he's on the field? You said you don't think that you're necessarily going to be able to tell within a month.
Yeah, I think a lot of my view is that personally, and I think you would agree with this. I think a lot of people would agree with this. I think that Travis Hunter is the single player with the most unknown about him from a fantasy perspective going into this year. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
So operating under that assumption, and then also understanding that baked into that unknown, a lot of that unknown is truly pure floor. A lot of that unknown is, like you said, maybe a DB goes down, and he is a corner now at the NFL level, and you just have a pumpkin sitting on your bench in Travis Hunter. Um, Absolutely believe in the upside. I was mega high on him as a prospect, specifically as a wide receiver prospect. But I think in a lot of that unknown is uh, I think that I think the coaching staff doesn't know entirely what they want to do yet either. I think it's going to take them a while to figure it out, and I think that the ways in which they attempt to figure it out are not going to be really obvious to us early on because I think the news came out today that he on the depth chart is a starting wide receiver and a backup corner. That could, I think it's easy to say, oh my gosh, that means that they think he's a difference maker at wide receiver. They understand that the wide receiver position is more important than cornerback in football. That's why they get paid more, and so they're gonna throw him at offense primarily. Or you could just say, he played corner in college. He was a better corner in college than he was a wide receiver, and they're just going to get him reps as they try to move in the direction of getting him to be the true two-way player that they spent the draft capital to get. They spent a buttload of draft capital to get him. They need everything about the draft capital tells you they want him to be that two-way player, and how they get him there, we just don't really know from looking at his deployment weeks 1 through 4 what his deployment is going to look like weeks 13 through 17, the ones that really matter. And I've personally just kind of bowed out of the race. I don't want to try and decipher what's going on in Jacksonville. Again, I think it's the most unknown, and there's a lot of floor in the unknown.
That's fair. What do you think the upside is? Like, if I said Travis Hunter finished as wide receiver five, is that possible, do you think?
I do not think that that is possible. No, I think that I mean absolute pure upside, like first percentile outcome. I'd say probably wide receiver 8 to 10, but even then, it's like even when I'm talking about ceilings, I'm not all the way talking about like that tippy top percentile. Usually, when I talk about ceiling range of outcomes, I'm dealing in the top 10th or 15th percentile. And I think that that more realistically is probably 12 to 18, like a top wide receiver too. Brian Thomas Jr. is still in the room, and he is still the one. From what I saw, as much as I like Travis Hunter as a prospect, from what I saw as him being a pretty raw prospect who was pretty much all tools, but then him being able to put it together last year, like I think he is a pretty top tier wide receiver one in the league. I don't see Travis Hunter usurping him in year one. Um, and it's we are really excited about the Liam Cohen offense. We are really excited about the Jaguars and what Trevor Lawrence could be. I am in that camp, but again, I think that when we're talking about ceiling range of outcomes in the 10 to 15th percentile, I'm probably not talking about the Bengals offense. I'm probably not talking about the Eagles offense. Those offenses that can really support two top 10 guys. I'm not talking about even the Dolphins when it looked really good with Tua, when Tua was earning his $250 million contract. I think it's probably
Mhm.
closer to, again, that 8 to 12 range. So I'm a little lower on Travis Hunter overall. I could be wrong, but he's one of the players I'm going to be okay with if he beats me this year.
That's fair. It's tough. I mean, he's the only receiver since he's the highest drafted receiver ever, tied with Megatron. I mean, it's just draft capital that you don't see at wide receiver. I mean, Travis Hunter, he's a special guy. They traded a lot to get him.
I think it's fair to say that I'm going to put this in keep trade cut terms because I truly am a keep trade cut truther. Every year, once the picks come out early in draft season, Keep Trade Cut will assign a point value to a draft slot. The 101 is worth X amount of points. The 102 is worth X amount less, right? Using that in NFL terms, the 102, let's say it's worth 5,000 points, and the 105, where maybe where he would have gone if he was a wide receiver is worth X amount of points. I don't think you can attribute all of the points of his draft capital to hit the wide receiver position and hope that he hits that he's Megatron, hope that he's Julio Jones. You know what I mean? I think that a lot of what makes up the value of him being selected is not just the fact that he's also a corner, but also the fact that the talents are multiplicative. Having one roster spot be able to play both ways, that is just that much more valuable. You know what I mean? So I don't really want to double count the draft capital. And yeah, there are just some concerns for me.
That's fair. All right. We'll move on to your first question. What are you looking for?
So feel free to rip it, man. I don't mean to come after Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter he truly is a unicorn. But kind of what I'm looking for through the first 4 weeks of the season is I want to know who the rookie RBs are that are going to be difference makers. Again, in redraft, it's someone who drafted Bashal Tutin is not going to trade you Bashal Tutin if he flashes anything at all in weeks 1 through 4, right? Because you draft Bashal Tutin knowing that he was number two in the NCAA last year in yards after contact per attempt. His missed tackle force numbers were amazing. His speed score is amazing. You're not going to be able to get him, but more from a dynasty setting. Every single year, we have late round running backs. I'll go ahead and say day three running backs. I'm going to bring up a day two running back, but day three running backs who go from being worth very little, go from probably being fob pickups after your rookie draft to being like mainstays of the fantasy landscape. Last year, we had Bucky Irving. You could not get Bucky Irving for a first round pick this year. He went in the third round of our draft last year. The year before that, we had Devon A. Chan in the third. He was drafted a little higher. But then he scored 50 points in week 3 of his rookie season, and his value skyrocketed. You know what I mean? The year before that, we had Tyler Algier, I think, and then Kyron Williams was either that year or the year before that in the 5th round. Every year there are guys like that, and this year in specific, we should be looking for a lot of guys like that. I see your Ollie Gordon shout out in our show doc. I love it, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. Ollie Gordon is a guy I largely wrote off because he was not all that great in the year before he was drafted, but in 2023 he was amazing. The point is, it's the best running back draft class we've seen since 2017, and I think we're hopeful that this class surpasses it. There is a wealth of running backs who are just more talented than where they were drafted this year because of the surplus. And I think that we could very easily see 3, 4, even 5 running backs from day 3 of this year's draft become first round pick level guys. So really what I'm watching for is anything trending in the right direction. I want to see them earning more carries on a week to week basis. I want to see maybe efficient, maybe even not efficiency, but just the fact that the coaches are willing to be moving in a direction. There is a progression plan for the rookies. We don't always know right away. We didn't really even know on Kyron until year 2. But I'm looking for the flashes. There are going to be guys. I have some favorites. Bashal Tutin is obviously one of my favorites. Jarquez Hunter is one of my favorites. Ja'Cory Cross Merritt, it feels like he's already realized a lot of that potential. You know what I mean? And maybe he's even a sell candidate now. But he's a guy who was picked in the 7th round. Outside of Isaiah Pacheco, how many 7th round running backs can you name that have had fantasy relevance? You know what I mean? There
There's
will
not
be
a
guys
lot.
this year that there will be guys this year that we do not expect. There will be a Taj Brooks. There will be an Ollie Gordon. There will be someone who shocks us. And if you can get to them first, especially if they're on a wire, especially if you can buy them for a 2nd round pick before they're worth a first, it's a very good way to mine value.
I was trying to go look, see where where Mr. Bill went last night. You picked him in the 8th round. Do you do you have any regret with that pick in the 8th round?
Not at all. Are you talking about the depth chart that came out today?
I mean, it's the
It's
same.
just
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of rookies that are buried on depth charts. Did you see Travion is behind Antonio Gibson in the
that's
Patriots depth chart that came out? I think,
yeah,
yeah,
that's
honestly,
that's
at
laughable.
this time of year it doesn't really matter. I was just gonna look Eckler. Yeah, Eckler is first in the depth chart. Who was second? I think Chris Rodriguez is second, and then Bill
I
is
believe it was
third.
third. What's his face? Old Titans running back was on there as well. I don't remember.
Oh,
I
I'm
don't
drawing a
remember the
blank.
order they were in. Yeah, Dexter McCluster. No, not him. But somewhere in that direction, right? You get the vibe.
I get what you mean. Um, anyways, your point is a good one. It's we kind of had this problem in the draft where there were so many good players that teams felt like they could just wait. Obviously the Raiders had Genty way ahead of everybody else on their board because they picked him at sixth, and then Hampton still went in the first round. Like with all those elite talents, Hampton was still a first round pick, and then you had Travion. Um, I agree that it could be. I mean, kind of the refrain last year was this is a really good receiver class. Next year's going to be a really good running back class. Um, I don't think either of last year's running backs in Benson or I'm already drawing a blank on his name. Who was the other guy? Brooks, Jonathan Brooks.
Jonathan, yeah, Jonathan Brooks.
Good grief. So he's his is a little bit different, but like these guys weren't super great last year, and then coming into this year, it's like there's so many elite players, and there is always somebody. There's somebody that's on the waiver wires that's going to be a big hit week one. One of the popular names right now is Ollie Gordon, just because of all the injuries ahead of him, and with Devon Achane having that injury, there was a little bit of concern. Like if Achane isn't a go for week one, then it's going to be the Ollie Gordon show. I think with Achane's size, there's a chance that Ollie Gordon is the goal line back. But situations like that are kind of what you watch for, because say Ollie Gordon has 5 carries inside the five and does bad with them, or he just gets unlucky and doesn't score. He has like 3 yards on the week. That's a player that I would actively be looking to target, where you kind of look at the usage and say, this is the guy that I want. Um, Maybe even in a dynasty league, if he doesn't do super great, you could go acquire him if you're the HN manager. Um, but yeah, trying to look. This is something that we'll try to do during the season is look at the underlying metrics. Don't just look at the points being scored. Because rookies come along slowly, typically. Even if it's not like a second year breakout, even if they have a first year breakout, it's usually back half of the first year. A lot of times rookies will struggle for the first few games and then they'll start to level up. So I think this is it's a good redraft and a dynasty take, but I think this could end up really impacting redraft this year.
I think it could in redraft as well. Also, just because of the volume, like you're not going to be able to roster every rookie running back. I know a lot of the popular ones, especially some of the fourth round guys, are on rosters right now. But there were 19 running backs taken on day three of the NFL draft, which is 20% more than the second most I've seen. And I'm just scrolling Pro Football Reference right now. I'm back to 2019 right now. I've just been kind of counting day three running backs over the years. Like I said, second closest was 16, but a lot of years were really existing in like the 11 to 14 range. I just did 2020. There were, or yeah, 2020. There were 8 running backs drafted on day three of the 2020 draft. And I just think that there's such a wealth of opportunity and talent coming into the league this year that there are going to be guys that are just out of left field. I was looking at I'm looking at some of these names that I liked pre-draft and sort of like this them that I have no exposure to whatsoever. I know that a one of Jordan James, Jaden Blue, DJ Giddens, Devin Neal will hit. One of those guys will be worth a high second to a late first next year. I I don't know what it is, but I'm hoping that I have a better idea of it 4 weeks into the season as I watch a lot of these guys get carries. That's something I'll be hoping to watch tape on if I have the time this season. Watching a lot of these backups and what they look like when they get their carries.
Yeah, in a dynasty league, these are guys that are on a taxi squad, so they're not necessarily going to be. I mean, these could be trade on the cheap. Maybe put them in at the end of a trade as kind of like the sweetener, and you're getting these dart throws. But in a redraft league, like where if you have 5 or 6 bench spots, you don't have enough roster space, like you said, to be rostering. You're not going to roster DJ Giddens and Devin Neal and Ollie Gordon and Bill. Like you're not going to use up 4 of your 5 spots on rookie running backs that might take until week 7 to hit. Right? Like a guy goes down week 9. you're not gonna hold on to Devin Neal for 8 weeks, and then he hits week 9, and you're like, oh, this is awesome. I'm so glad I held on to Devin Neal. These are guys that you're gonna have to fight for on waivers, most likely when they hit. So I think some actionable advice probably would be with the last pick in your draft, or maybe even pick one of these guys up. Just take a dart throw, and if they hit in week 1, then you have the guy, and if not, then you have a guy that you can cut and move on. Um, that's a lot of day 3 picks, though. I mean, that's a ton.
Yeah, I have some level of confidence that I could keep counting, and that would probably be the most. And at bare minimum, I'm sure that's a 5 to 10th percentile count of day three running backs. Also, I do think it's a little bit facetious to keep including Bill when we're talking about some of those Ollie Gordons and let's be very clear. He is being drafted ahead of Caleb Johnson on ESPN right now, and I
It's
think that's as
crazy.
it should be.
Oh my goodness. That's
Wouldn't
insane
would
to me.
wouldn't trade him for Caleb Johnson and a first. I'm just kidding.
Oh man. I mean, that's just so many. I can hear one of the older gentlemen in our league saying, "But you don't remember the draft of '98, Mr. Zach."
Yeah, I wasn't alive then. I'm going to be honest with you.
Oh man. Anyways, point is there's a lot of rookie running backs taken on day 3 that have potential. Um, all right, we're gonna take a break and then we'll come back with our last 2 picks. All right, Zach and I both dropped our first question. How is Travis Hunter going to be used, and who are the late rookie running backs that we're looking for? My second question is, will the year 2 quarterbacks take a step? Now, historically, not everybody takes a step. Um, right now, we're on the rose-colored glasses side of things, so we're hoping everybody does take a step. And it's one of those things that would be good for the league if all of them take a step. But it affects a lot more than just them. A, it makes more watchable football. If all of these guys took a step, it would be great. Yeah, okay. Sorry, I was just spitballing that list. May have forgotten to put Drake May on the list of second-year quarterbacks. I mean, the quarterbacks that I'm thinking of are like Caleb Bowe, Michael Penix, McCarthy, Drake May. Statistically speaking, not all of those guys are going to hit. Um, we hope that there'll be a statistical anomaly and all of them will hit. But like with Caleb Williams, there's a lot riding on him. They have a lot of mouths to feed in that offense, and we really need Caleb to take a step to make drafting Rome Odunze and that breakout worth it. DJ Moore, I mean, you have Luther Burden, you have Colt. If Caleb Williams doesn't take a step from what he was last season, then almost all of those picks are going to be bad. Um, Drafting Caleb at the end of drafts is a really good pick, even in a one quarterback league, to potentially take the shot on him. Then you look at Bo. I mean, he was a top 10 fantasy quarterback last year. He has Cortland Sutton. We have a couple sleepers like Marvin Mims. Um, Pat Bryant is another sleeper. Evan Ingram, if he could be a usable fantasy tight end, that would be great in a landscape where we don't really have very many tight ends. Having another solid option would be phenomenal. Michael Penix, you have Drake London going at the 1-2 turn. Sometimes he falls into the middle or late second round, but mostly it's like a 1-2 turn, early second kind of guy. Maybe Kyle Pitts is something. Yeah, year 4 Kyle Pitts, huh? Can I interest you? Um, JJ McCarthy. This one is really, I think this one is honestly, in my opinion, the most impactful. You have Justin Jefferson, who's a top 4 to 6 first round pick. You have Jordan Addison once he comes back. Adam Thielen got traded there. TJ Hawkinson. I mean, Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones are both drafted fantasy running backs. Like if JJ McCarthy stinks, that would hurt a lot of fantasy options. And so we're hopefully that he would take a leap. And then finally Drake May. Can't forget about Drake May. I took him in our draft last night. He's so good. If I had to make a bet, I would say that he is the guy that like really levels up into being an elite fantasy football option. He doesn't have as many pieces relying on him. I would say, like with Travion, you hope that the Patriots are a good offense, so Travion has scoring opportunities. Maybe a Kyle Williams sleeper. He doesn't have as many pieces reliant on him as of now, but I think standalone value, he could be the guy that like really takes a leap and is a top 3 to 5 fantasy quarterback going forward every year. So that's just my question is like in the first few weeks of the season, do we see these guys really take a step up and become the next quarterbacks of the NFL, the guys that you want to draft, the guys that you're debating in the third, fourth, fifth round every year, the guys that you love when a weapon is drafted to them? Or are these guys that either regress, which hopefully they don't, or even stay the same, which in some of these situations, like I said with Caleb, it wouldn't be enough. So that's, I mean, just watching for how these quarterbacks do, I'm really interested to see. And again, I hope all of them take a step forward. Do you have a pick of anybody you think will bust out of this group?
I feel like you have to take Penix if you're going to choose someone to bust. I feel like if you saw odds on a sports book at the top, right? Not to say I don't believe in him. Not to say that I think he's going to. I just think he's statistically the most likely to. But I think overall, I'm not betting on any of these guys in a vacuum to bust. Like you said, statistically, it would be an anomaly if all six of the guys last year hit. But I don't really think we're going to have a good idea of what that is for a little while, especially with McCarthy never having played a game before. Um, yeah, I think all these guys will be in conversations for years to come. Maybe not the three, four turn fantasy conversations, right? Outside of like Jaden Daniels and Drake May, maybe Caleb. But yeah, I'm also very interested to see what it looks like. I think the biggest thing is, as you said, I think the environments that they exist in is going to be one of the biggest things because I think that I, I, these guys performing or not performing is going to be the biggest driver in whether the peripheral options in those offenses are returning on their value of ADP. You know what I mean? If McCarthy stinks, Justin Jefferson will probably be a league loser this year because you're spending a top five pick to put him on your team. You know what I mean? If Drake takes the step, if Drake does what we if he takes the jump in approximate value around him on offense and he takes a similar size jump from what he was last year to this year, he will carry guys with him. One of Steph Diggs, Pop Douglas, one of those guys will be a top 20 wide receiver and a huge ADP value. You know what I mean? I think it matters a lot more for the peripherals. One thing that I've been rolling around in my brain for quite a few months now is what is it? What do you think the anatomy of a sophomore slump is with a quarterback? Obviously, last year we saw CJ Stroud, what we would diagnose as a sophomore slump, and I've been trying. I've been trying to contain my optimism with the Commanders in Jane Daniels. I think Jane Daniels is an excellent quarterback. I really liked everything I saw from the offense last year, but Bobby Slowick and Cliff Kingsbury don't really seem all that different. You know, we've seen Cliff Kingsbury have some very clear flaws in the past. It's not hard to tell the story about how he could engineer a slump the same way it feels like Bobby Slowick and that offensive line did for Stroud in year two. What do you think about sophomore slumps? Kind of what makes those up? Do you believe it's a real thing? Do you believe it's kind of what do you think?
I think that part of a sophomore slump, so I guess to paint the picture with Stroud, he was quarterback 11 and then quarterback 18. So part of it was he was quarterback 11. We projected that he was going to take a leap in year two. And so I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was somewhere around like quarterback 5 or
Yeah,
quarterback
it
6.
was way up there. It was insane.
Where it's like you basically had to call your shot. So when they either regress or stay the same, it feels like a sophomore slump. Now he was quarterback 18. Bobby Slowick was awful for some reason. I really I haven't done enough deep dive on him. I know that he was like one of the highest run rates on second down, on second and long. So basically, if they had an incompletion at second and 10, he was going to run the ball. And then you're in third and 8 pretty consistently, third and 5 to third and 8. And that's not, oh, we're back. And that's not conducive to taking a leap forward. So obviously you need a good coordinator. I think you can't have the expectations too high because if you have the expectations too high to where you're already betting on their ceiling, and most everything is going to be a sophomore slump. I almost think about I don't know how much you pay attention to college football, but Arch Manning last weekend, like Arch Manning was anointed to be the next thing, and he comes out week one play in Columbus, Ohio, and doesn't have a great week one. So like we were already betting on Arch being the number one overall pick, this elite guy, and so he doesn't have a super great game, and we freak out. That's just a little college analogy, but so I think for a sophomore slump, I think it's really when you don't take the leap because we like to talk about year two leaps. You like to look for a year two leap. That's kind of I guess the two things that you look at is like a year two leap or a sophomore slump. Like you kind of project them going either way. So if you project them taking the leap, I think it's really easy to have a slump. I don't think any of these guys have really got steamed up too much. Um, like when I'm drafting, I'm not seeing. I think the highest one drafted here is Bo Nix, and he finished the highest last year. So I don't even think it's a crazy take to have Bo in the eighth round. Guess that's a good question. What would you say makes a sophomore slump?
I would definitely say CJ Stroud sophomore slumped. I understand it was a QB 18, I think you said, but
Yeah.
also on a points per he played 17 games. On a points per game basis, he was quarterback 33. And if even
Whoa.
if you remove the quarterbacks who played less than 10 games, right? I don't think it's all that accurate to say that Joe Milton had a better season than CJ Stroud just because he lit it up in week 18. But that would only remove six quarterbacks from in front of him. So he is still operating with
27?
27. So like he's still in
Ugh.
the bottom 15th percentile of quarterbacks last year. He scored 13.7 points per game last year. If you go back to 23, that number again would put him outside of the top 30. And some of the guys ahead of him last year, like Derek Carr, was a full point per game ahead of him at QB 30 last year, played 17 games. Geno Smith last year, which was not the didn't write back here, played 15 games and had two full points per game ahead of him. Josh Dobbs, I'm seeing Sam Howell had more points per game. You know what I mean? So I'm definitely going to say that last year was a sophomore slump. Um, and I think I don't know. I think that that is actually something I am looking to gain a better understanding of is what causes them because I think that yes, I'm going to blame primarily Bobby Slowick and the offensive line. But I think there is something to be said for when you have a full offseason to watch tape on a quarterback, you are going to have a better idea to gain an idea of tendencies and patterns than you are when you have 4 days of practice and film to
Yep.
prepare for a guy and they're actively preparing for you as well. You know what I mean? I think that the sophomore slump is real, but I think a little bit overblown. I am still betting on Jaden this year. I'm admittedly really excited to see what he does in year two. And I'll probably just blame Cliff Kingsbury if it all falls off the runs off the rails.
Stroud also had a really bad injury luck. I mean, Stephon Diggs tore his ACL. Tank Dell had that injury. Nico was out for a lot of the year, so there was a lot of the year where he was throwing to Xavier Hutchinson. I mean, Joe Mixon was
Yeah.
getting a ton of work. So at some point, it was at least decent coaching that they basically said we can't really throw the ball. We like you, CJ Stroud, but you're not going to be throwing to anybody who can really do anything. Um, like with this year coming in, I guess the actionable advice would be like you look at Caleb. I already touched on it earlier, but he has like five legitimate weapons that I, in my opinion, not even touching the running back room. If one of Roshan Johnson, um, or man, who's that? Who's the late guy? I'm blanking.
Manungai out of Rutgers.
Manungai.
Kyle Manungai, yeah.
If one of those two takes a step and is like a really good player, I mean, Manungai is another guy. It was a day three running back. He could be something. We don't know. But Caleb has so many options. I think, honestly, I hate to say it, but Bo has a little bit of concern. Like if Cortland Sutton gets hurt, which he's an older receiver, like what do they have? They have Evan Ingram, who's never really been an alpha. They have Troy Franklin, um, Pat Bryant. I mean, they have a bunch of guys that look okay when you put them as a second and third and fourth wide receiver. But if they're the one, but I think the hard part for me is when you look at Stroud and you had a couple catastrophic injuries that derailed his career. that's something that could happen to Caleb. Like if both DJ Moore and Rome Odunze get hurt, then his season could be derailed, but it's not something that you can bank on. Right? Like outside of maybe like Kenneth Walker and T. Higgins, there aren't guys that you can really bank on injury with. And so I think one of these guys could luck in, I mean bad luck. They could luck into having a really, really bad season. Um, I think most of these guys have enough guys around them outside of Drake. Drake is the other guy where if injuries happen, he already has such a bad wide receiver core that that could hurt him. He's gonna have to elevate players around him. Um, yeah, freak injury plays. I think it played a pretty big role in Stroud's being bad last year, and I don't know that you can really prescribe that for any of these guys.
If you had to pie chart it, if you had to do a pie chart, we're going to use three metrics, where one's Bobby Slowick and his poor play calling
Mm.
and pass protection designs. The second is going to be the talent and health of the offensive line and the quick pressure that he dealt with last year. And the third is the health of the receiver. And what does that pie chart look like for you? Because I think it looks a lot different for me personally. I think that mine is going to be probably about 45% Bobby Slowick, probably another 30%, probably 35% the offensive line struggles, and then it's probably going to be left to about 20, 25, 30, somewhere in that range. I don't think the wide receiver depth is as much of an issue as coaching and offensive line is.
I would say, yeah, you're right. I think we have that flipped a little bit. I think, I would say it's probably about 50%. Well, maybe it's probably about 40% on Slowick, 40% on the receivers, and that would leave about
Mm.
20% on the O line. Just because I feel like Slowick was not putting him in a situation to succeed. I think when your O line is bad, that's when you start throwing a bunch of screens, you start throwing slants, and Slowick should not have been calling the plays that he did necessarily. Um, but I think not having guys to throw it to, like I guess what I'm trying to say is it's kind of a compounding issue. If you have guys that can't win off the line and your O line is letting them in really quickly, like you have to have one or the other. You have to have either a good O line that gives your mediocre guys enough time to separate, or really good guys that separate fast enough that you can just dump it right to them before the O line lets the guys through. I think there's definitely plenty of blame to go around. The Texans chose to put the blame at Bobby Slowick's feet this offseason and fired him. Um, yeah, that's interesting. Hmm.
Yeah, we fall on opposite sides. I think that there's a lot of overlap between the offensive line. I think overall, I would rather have a solid offensive line and a horrible wide receiver room than a bad offensive line and a good wide receiver room. I very firmly believe that offensive line is more important. But also, Bobby Slowick was not well prepared to set them up for success last year. They in a lot of those games, they were just very ill prepared. Like they were missing on stunts, a lot of unblocked pressure last year. I think behind only Seattle in unblocked pressures last year for CJ Stroud. Um,
That's not
he
good.
was not he didn't really have the pass protection dialed in the way it should be. And I think that that may have even been a larger issue than Tunsil, or larger issue than talent, which is why they let Tunsil walk out the door for picks this season after. And they feel like getting Nick Calian is going to solve a lot of that, just basic discipline and rules to the pass protection. You know what I mean? But interesting stuff. I think that I think it'll be interesting to see.
It's worth noting, I think through the first 2 weeks of the NFL season last year, Bo, Jaden, and Caleb were I think a combined like 0 touchdowns and 3 picks or something insane. I mean, it looked really bad. So hopefully they come out looking a little bit better than that this year. I would say hopefully they all come out firing on all cylinders, but I'm fascinated. That's one that hopefully we have some semblance of answers in the first 4 weeks, but it's going to be an ongoing, like I'm curious to watch it the whole season. Um, just because it affects so much, and these are guys that could either Anthony Richardson where they're competing with Daniel Jones for a starting job in a year, or they vault up into the Jaden Daniels, Josh Allen, Lamar in that third, fourth round. I'm fascinated to watch these year two quarterbacks.
Absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and jump into my last one if you don't have anything else for the quarterbacks.
Go for it.
This one is actually much more redraft focused. I want to know who the horrible defenses are, and I want to know quickly. I was looking, this is a little bit anecdotal. I only really did analysis on 2024. But last year, the defenses you really wanted to be targeting were obviously Carolina. That's the very clear and obvious one. But Cincinnati is in that boat as well. And it seemed like we knew pretty early what those defenses were going to look like. Carolina had like 40 points hung on them by the Saints early on, and then they went on a run of like I think 5 games in a row, getting 30 hung on them. And I think that I think that that's really what we're looking for. Is it feels a little bit outlier when you are looking at teams that are having high 30s, low 40s points put on them. But I think that that is really what we're looking for early in the season is I want to be taking note every time a team scores over 40 points. I want to see who is it against, and is it more of an outlier that that happened, or is this defense one that the wheels can fall off a little bit? You know what I mean? Because these defenses that really can, when it goes bad, it goes very bad. Those are the ones you really want to be targeting in fantasy football. Those are the ones that are going to give you the weak winning performances when you play against them. You know what I mean? Last year we targeted. I want to say we targeted Carolina all year long, but I wasn't really targeting Carolina early on in the season when I was playing my running backs. It took me a little while longer than I would have liked to catch on to that, and I'd like to catch on a little faster this year. I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to what defenses are really, really rough, you know, because there's a lot of teams we could see go either way. The Jets, I think, are one of them. Not a great defense last year. New coordinator. They have talent for sure, but maybe an early on injury, you know what I mean? Maybe the team is not gelling. Maybe they're losing games and they're not buying into the whole Aaron Glenn thing. I could see top 10 from them this year. I could see bottom five for them this year. And I think that it's important to try and identify those defenses. Traditionally less sticky of a like a lot of those metrics are less sticky than a lot of the offensive ones. So uh, we could definitely see some new defenses be bottom of the barrel this year, and I really want to exploit that as early as I can in the season.
Just to put some context on it, the Panthers defense in 2024 was statistically arguably the worst of all time. They had the most points allowed in a single season with
Horrible.
534. I'll do the math in a second on the number per game. So they would have played, I'll just do it right now.
I'll
They
give it to
played
you.
17
Yeah, I'll
games,
do it.
534 divided by 17. They were averaging 31 points a game. They were giving up 31 points a game.
Insanity.
So you look at a team like that, and it actually got to the point where you're like, I don't want to play my quarterback against them because they're gonna get blown out so bad. The second
I do
stat that
remember that. Yeah.
the second stat that backs that up is they gave up the most total yards, 6,800, and rushing yards, 3,000 in the league that season. So it put them last in defensive EPA and DVOA. So like you said, I mean, you get towards the end of the year and you're running low on running backs. You say, what? I'm gonna look for the running back 25-ish, who's not really going to be super high. Maybe he's even on waivers. He's going to be playing the Panthers. Um, there's also a lot of schemes. Like I remember when Mahomes came into the league, there was kind of this monumental shift where he was bombing it to Tyreek, and the league kind of shifted to more of a cover two shell, where everybody's playing back more, so they're just allowing a lot of underneath stuff. There's there's teams that are just kind of like you can throw to the tight end all you want. We don't care how many times you throw to the tight end underneath. We're just gonna let you do it over and over and over again, and we're just gonna sit back here. You're gonna have to beat us by being perfect over and over and over, and we're not going to let you take bombs on that. So there's teams every year that are bad like against the tight end, or they're bad against the run, or they're bad against receivers. Sometimes there's teams that like have a shadow corner, um, and their cornerback too is really bad, so you want to target maybe a wide receiver too. As the year goes on, I mean, do you remember last year the Saints? I mean, the Saints through 3 weeks, I think they dropped like 30, 40, and 30 points, and everybody was like, "Is this team gonna be like the best team in the league? Are the
I
Saints gonna
remember.
are the Saints gonna pull this out?" And then it was like, "Oh wait, no. The Panthers are just really that bad." And the House of Cards came crumbling down. So, um, I also had a debate last night during our draft. One of the guys that I don't know if he'll be watching this or not, but my my argument was I'm only going to take one of the onesie positions really high. I don't want to double up in the first few rounds because I feel confident in our ability to look at defenses and find tight ends to stream every week or quarterbacks to stream every week that will get me close. So if I can stream a quarterback and get a third round running back versus a third round quarterback and trying to find somebody off the waivers to play, it's a little bit harder to do that at running back. I think um, watching the defenses early, like you said, there's so much that changes at defense. Like we kind of see our guys on offense and we know generally what direction they're heading. Defenses take, I mean, you get a new coordinator in there, they install an entirely new scheme. Could go really, really good or really, really bad. Um, I think the Panthers are probably going to be a defense to target again this year. If I don't, I think their first they picked Derek Harmon in the first round, I think, and I think he's hurt. I
No, that was the
don't.
Steelers. They took Tet
Oh
in the
yeah,
first. They took I believe it's either Princely or Skirton. I know is hurt. They're two edges they took back to back, I think in the second and the third. Princely Amon Allen out of Ole Miss and Nick Skirton out of A&M. I don't know which one is hurt, but I know it's one of them.
yeah. Anyways, there's going to be defenses to target, and those ones you should believe. Like when a team comes out and shows you who they are on defense, you should believe them. Like when the Panthers are bad, really bad against the Saints. Um, like if we see an offensive explosion from a team that we think is going to be really bad this year, like I don't know this. I don't really have a good example off the top of my head, but we have like if the Browns come out, I guess the Browns play the Bengals week one. So the Browns are going to come out. Joe Flacco's probably going to throw for like 400 yards. Judy's going to be at like 160 and two touchdowns, and everybody's going to be like, "Oh, Judy, wheels up." Um, maybe you just target teams against the or players against the Bengals defense.
I think it'll be good to know early. It's always better to know early because I know that one thing that frustrates me year after year is I do have a hard time moving my studs out of positions to out of starting spots to get in my backups with good matchups. It's something I have a really hard time doing. You know what I mean? The guys who just don't pan out in the way I want them to, I have a hard time. So that's kind of a personal goal this year is be more willing to bench my studs, be more willing to bench my guys at the top and really try to match up for them a little bit, especially when the signs are there. You know, don't be overly hopeful this year is something I'm trying to learn a little bit of.
Yeah, I was looking at the team that I drafted last night, and I can imagine like week two going into week or I'm going into week four, and I have Nico in my starting wide receiver spot, and he's playing an insanely good matchup, and I have like Cedric Tillman. Like the mental fortitude it takes to like bench Nico Collins for Cedric Tillman is something that I don't know if it matters how long you play fantasy football. Um, Decisions like that can either win you the championship by just sheer like why would you have done this? And then Cedric Tillman goes out and drops 30 because he's playing the Bengals, and Nico gets 15, which is still a good score. But when you have 30 sitting on your bench, yeah, I agree. I mean, it's just so hard to take those studs out. Oh,
People will always remember a stupid move before a smart one. You know what I mean? You might feel like a genius, but man, if you screw that up, you'll never hear the end of it.
yeah,
I have a
yeah,
hard time doing it, man. I really do.
it's a tough one. Yeah, I mean it'll be good to look for because I think once you're 3, 4 weeks into the season, you can really start to prescribe how it's looking because you can also have it skewed the other way where you play like a juggernaut offense. Even though the Packers defense looks pretty good, they might get shredded week one by the Lions. Like the Lions are just a really, really good team, and we could be like, well, are the Packers going to be a team that we can or they're sorry, going into week two, you're looking at your defensive metrics and you're like, huh, Packers look like a team to target. So there is a little bit of it going the other way too, where you want to have like a 2, 3 game sample size because if it gets skewed by week one and the Lions go drop 40, that does not mean the Packers are a bad defense. Um, so that's kind of the hard thing is like which way do you go? Do you take the stance that the team that the Saints of last year leveled up and are truly an elite team now, and we should believe it? Or do you take the stance that the Panthers are the bad team? It's like chicken or the egg. Which side are you on?
I will say one of the things I did notice, and this is purely anecdotal. I do not have data to back this up. I probably should. Maybe on next year's show when we talk about this, I'll have some data to back it up. Anecdotally, when I was looking at trends over over the first 4 weeks of the season, it did seem to be concentrated to yes, you are going to get games like that. Yes, sometimes the Lions will score 40 on the Packers, but when you really start getting into those upper echelon scores, the 35 plus scores, I do believe they are a little bit more indicative of it actually being a bad defense more than the variance of a good team. You know what I mean? I think that a good offense will be able to score 20 to 30 points on a lot of teams in the league. You know what I mean? Not necessarily just the bad defenses, but scoring scoring over 35 points in the NFL, in the NFL we live in, where we touched on a little bit about how we've gotten a lot more conservative as these like Vic Fangio schemes have kind of like because of the way the quarterbacks of this force you to play. I mean, it's harder to run up those scores. You know, the scoreboards look very different than they did 10 years ago. And I do think that maybe it's a little more correlated than it is variance. And I think I would be quicker to lean into if I see a 40-point score in weeks 1 through 3 this year. I think I think I'm going to be a little more aggressive saying that's probably a poor defense than writing it off and saying that's just a really good offense. I think I'll probably move my needle more on the defense than I will on the offense.
That's fair. Yeah, that's a good point. Like if you're playing a cover two shell and you still get 45 dropped on you, like, you have really bad personnel at that point.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean defenses are one of those things that if you pick your defenses right, it can win you weeks down the stretch. And even in the fantasy playoffs, if you can pick your defenses right, either way, like if you trade for a guy who has a really good strength of schedule going forward, or you pick up your defense 2 weeks out and they score you 20 points. Either one can win you a week. So defenses are a great thing to look for and something that we'll be watching closely all season, but specifically in the first few weeks. Um, we'll touch on some news before we get out of here. It's crazy. I mean, just kind of a side note. We'll post this episode, but the next episode that we post will be after football is played. Like that's pretty awesome. It's crazy
Incredible.
to scroll back through the show doc. Like when we started this May 6th, we were so far out from football. It was tough, but we're here. The big news of the week. Speaking of the Packers, the Packers was kind of an anecdotal thing that I was talking about because they play a really good team, but they have a couple pieces of news. The Micah Parsons trade. I mean, it's massive. They traded Kenny Clark. They traded him to the Packers from the Cowboys. The Packers traded Kenny Clark, a 26 first round and a 27 first round for Micah Parsons. This is definitely in the blockbuster trade. Um, the Packers became immediately favorites for the NFC North. It's slim favorites over the Lions. They're projected to beat the Lions week one. I think that's an underdog that I would take as the Lions, me personally. Um, but it's a massive trade. It makes the Cowboys, in my opinion, the NFC version of the Bengals, where they don't have a defense. They have a high flying offense, not a great run game. I think the Cowboys are all going to be great for fantasy this year. They're going to stink. They're going to be one of those teams that I think we target pretty early on, where it's like they're going to be getting points dropped on them left and right, and the offense is good enough to keep up. This is like exactly what we want for fantasy, where the spreads or the over-unders are probably going to be like mid 50s. We might see a 60 if the Cowboys and Bengals play each other this year. I don't know. I don't know off the top of my head if they do. But this is a massive trade. How does this shake out for fantasy for you?
Yeah, for fantasy, yeah, I was already really high on the Cowboys. Again, another slight bump in the Cowboys direction, you know, not having the defense, you know what I mean? But yeah, as far as league landscape goes, this is the biggest trade in my opinion since the Stafford trade. I think it's kind of insane. I think that Jerry Jones' disaster class. It was almost sad. I mean, I'm a Niners fan. There's a little bit of Cowboys Niners rivalry. Like, I don't really have any sympathy for Cowboys fans, but like, man, I cannot imagine having my franchise be run by Jerry Jones. I've seen people switch. I've seen people say I am no longer a Cowboys fan. And I don't. I think it's maybe an overreaction to the news itself. But like when you look at the body of work of Jerry Jones, at least over the past half decade, I get it. I understand. That is not something that I want to root for. Very sad. Very sad. Sky high on the Packers now. The Packers are already have quite a bit of money invested in them to make the playoffs. I did before the Micah trade, so that was awesome seeing that go through. It's like they feel like damn near a playoff lock at this point. Feel really good about that. Yeah, I think that they are genuine contenders this year. I think, especially in the NFC, maybe in the AFC, I wouldn't say that about them, but I think in the NFC for sure. I think that any game against the Eagles in the playoffs, I'm going to look at those teams and think I have a hard time making the Eagles more than a 3-point favorite. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah, massive trade. Staying on the Packers, Jaden Reed is playing through a Jones fracture. Um, it's not good. It lowers Jaden Reed's ceiling. He has a higher risk of re-injury, and if it gets bad enough, he might just have surgery and then be done for the season. It's a bummer. I was high on Jaden Reed this year. I think this opens the door for Matthew Golden, maybe a potential Romeo Dobbs. Mike, if you're listening, I will not trade you for Romeo Dobbs. He keeps sending me like 10 fab offers for Romeo Dobbs, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. But it does open a potential door for him. Tucker Kraft, a guy I know you're high on. It opens a potential door for him. Yeah, I mean it's always been a problem in Green Bay that they have too many mouths to feed. This potentially removes one of them.
I haven't heard much about the injury. Like, I don't really know the extent of it. I don't know what kind of time he's looking to miss or what the re-injury risk is. It seemed, I feel like I was reading on Twitter, and I saw something about Jaden Reed who's taking it very unseriously. Like he was recommended surgery and he made but I don't know for sure if that's even true. Don't really have a lot of data on this, but yeah, again, Jaden Reed is like he's a better and best ball player for me. I don't really own a lot of shares of him, except in my deep rebuilds. Yeah, Tucker Craft 10-1, maybe, hopefully. That'd be sweet for me. I own quite a few shares of him.
There you go. Jawan Jennings is back to practice. He's missed quite a bit of time with a calf injury, but it's kind of like a calf contract injury wink, and it's one of those situations where we don't know if he like has a serious calf injury that he's missed time for, or if he just wanted a new contract and so he's been out. Either way, he's back at practice. That's really good for the 49ers if you have Brock Purdy week one, just because I mean, I think it's actually good for Kittle and CMC too, because if Jawan Jennings wasn't out there and it was just CMC, Kittle, and Ricky Pearsall, I think CMC gets like 25 carries and Kittle gets like 15 targets, and they both snap by week three.
15 targets for George Kittle. Can you imagine? He might score 100 fantasy points. It's in the range of outcomes. That is the 10th percentile for him. Is probably a full 100 off 15 targets.
Yeah, I love that. I yeah, I love George Kittle this year.
So,
AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, both off the injury report, ready to go for Thursday night. It's wheels up for the Eagles. Do you know off the top of your head what the spread is? I
I
looked
believe
up
it's
what the
seven
spread
and a
is.
half last I saw.
It went up to 8.5.
And we're up to 8.5. Wow. I'm surprised to see that much movement after the Micah trade. Maybe it's public money coming in on the Eagles side. I'm sure the Eagles are a massive public favorite. Um,
Wouldn't that be such a Jerry thing to do? Come out and win on Thursday Night Football. That would be like
uh,
the I Jerry would be unbearable.
yeah, it'd be electric. I have a hard time. I mean, I'm not laying the 8.5.
No, that's tough.
I liked the 7.5 a lot when they still had a before they traded away a top two defensive player in the league.
Minus 8.5. Yeah. This is MGM. Bet MGM. Money line Philly is a minus 441 on the money line. That's insane. Anyways, they get their two guys back. I think it's wheels up for both of those guys week one. Like I said, I think Dak and George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb can keep up to where it's at least competitive potentially into the second half. Um, and so you could see an AJ Brown or Devonta Smith. I could honestly see them both getting a touchdown. Jalen Hurts throwing for like 250. They both get a touchdown, and you're happy starting all the receiving options.
It'll be interesting. I'm just so excited to watch it. I don't really have a
I
dug in
know
take at this point in time. I'm just really excited to see it, man. It's gonna be awesome.
it's gonna be phenomenal. All right, that wraps up episode number 15. We'll be back next week, episode number 16. Real football, real fantasy points are being scored. It's awesome.
Cannot wait. Cannot wait.